So without further ado, it's time to talk about our leadership panel, and what we're going to be discussing is the complexities of the supply chain. From this point of view, the shipper, freight forwarder, broker, and carrier, and we'll be discussing the pressure points and ideas to reduce the supply chain complexities and improve current processes. Let's meet some of our guests. Well, we have Billy Hupp, Chief Operating Officer and Executive Vice President at Estes Express Lines. Stephen Borggreve, Chief Digital Officer at Hellmann Worldwide Logistics. Mark Baxa, Interim Chief Executive Officer at CSCMP. And of course, representing the 3PLs of the world, that will be myself, Dan Kubart, Director of Market Development at GLT Logistics. So welcome, gentlemen. How's everybody doing today?
Doing well, thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Great,
excellent.
thanks.
Thank you for joining us. We got a couple of questions here. And again, guys, just to remind you, it's an open-ended discussion. I'm not going to pick on anybody. I just feel free to jump in and answer whenever you're ready. If I don't hear from you, I'm certainly going to pick on you at that point. So fair enough, right? Let's jump right into our first question. What are the main challenges all players are facing in the supply chain today? I mean, that's a real open-ended question. Who wants to start off on that one?
You know, I guess being a carrier, I probably have some insight there. I don't think there are any issues with the supply chain right now. Just kidding, by the way. So from the carrier side, it's about capacity, right? I mean, you know, capacity comes in several different flavors. We all know there's a lot of freight out there. There's a lot of demand for service. And when things kind of get clogged up, the demand even goes up because there's people looking for a product that they've been waiting for, right? So, you know, if you try to order a piece of furniture, it's 5 months down the road, right? So lots of things affecting that supply chain. Start off with the driver shortage and even warehouse people in shortage, right? It's just a lack of people really wanting to do that work. It's hard work, right? And drivers have, I think, critical jobs, and yet I think they're a bit underappreciated still today. I think you're starting to see their compensation go up with demand, but also in the warehouse, right? So there's a lot of people looking for people to do work right now, and there's a lot of reasons not to work right now. So you fight all of that and you end up with a shortage there. On the equipment side, the manufacturers are behind about as much as 6 months on orders that were supposed to have been delivered with trailers and tractors are being delayed because they don't have parts, right? So that's supply chain is affecting their ability to finish equipment and to build equipment, which also affects the supply chain because there's not equipment to move product as readily as it should be. Then for carriers like ourselves in the LTL world, where we cross stock freight, and we have to, you know, forklift manufacturers are behind. Facilities are something that we plan to grow a certain percentage of our facilities on an annual basis. When we have a 20% hit in business, our facilities are not equipped for that kind of growth and that kind of speed. So it's been kind of a crazy year. A year ago, maybe a year and 3 months ago, we were afraid we were going out of business because we didn't have enough freight. About 8 months later, we were afraid we were going out of business because we couldn't move it, right? So it's been a really unique year, and I think the supply chain is technology really helps us know a lot more about where we are in the supply chain, but it is definitely not a smooth, well-oiled machine at this time.
Well said. Yeah, you know, being from the 3PL side of things, some of the challenges that we face are capacity issues with LTL carriers or full truckload carriers. That's the main issue, I would say, in the 3PL world, making sure that our customers' freight is picked up on time and make sure it's delivered on time, damage free, of course. But, you know, with more and more capacity issues coming online daily, and less drivers being on the front lines, and less equipment being delivered on time, it just exponents the issues that the customers are facing on a daily basis for pickups and simple pickups and deliveries, which used to be commonplace. Dispatcher was looking, he says, I have 20 pickups on the board today for this driver. That shouldn't be a problem. But now it's more than a problem. Just trying to get there on time, making sure the deliveries are done, and then getting unloaded, and then making all the pickups. Again, customer satisfaction is what we're looking for do here, and with the capacity issues the way they are today, it's really hurting all industries. Any
I
comments on
think
that?
during COVID, the drivers, they weren't able to work from home, right? They were in harm's way every day.
Right.
And I think some people decided to get out of the business during that time because they didn't want to take that risk. Maybe they had a health issue, or maybe there was something, but that was hard on the workforce of the carrier industry.
This is true. Mark, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I really appreciate the view that both you, Dan, and Billy have brought from a transportation and distribution perspective. These are very real issues that we're currently facing, and the path forward may not look very favorable either for the next perhaps 3 to even 4 quarters as manufacturers attempt to protect the raw material position in order to also build to stock, because the pace of demand, although it's somewhat unpredictable still for many businesses right now, the trend is definitely up. So taking a self-preservation approach is becoming a position that supply chains are beginning to look at now to ensure delivery or availability to delivery of inventory. I think the three-legged stool, if I could look strategically and holistically at the supply chain, also has a direct impact on transportation, but certainly the broader functions of supply chain and a company's ability to compete. And the first one really began back in 2018 when the tariffs on China hit all of us in terms of really a shock and awe in terms of order of magnitude, unanticipated disruption that, although it was part of a campaign, really didn't resonate with many in the industry, and that would be globally, not just here in the US. And the impacts that drove from a sudden shift in cost of goods and alternative sourcing strategies still today is something that many in the supply chain are challenged with. Near sourcing versus the ability to resource, if you will, or reshore in other places of low-cost manufacturing, high-quality output is a continuation of discovery and strategic, if you will, moves that many companies are still working through right now. The second part, I think, as I think about our challenges, is really the issue of human health and COVID. No question. I mean, it's hardly worth noting at this point, only because it's so well known, but the impacts certainly aren't. And that's why it's worthy of a conversation. Companies today who didn't have a real resiliency strategy in place that was easily or within reach of implementation, the systems enabling early indicators of either supplier performance issues or failure, and the extended supply chain continue to challenge many as we come out of the impact of the pandemic. And by that I think about an old cartoon that you may have seen in the past. Is you have the premium, mid-grade, and standard gasoline at a gas station, and you look at that, and underneath the ground, they're all pointing to the same tank. Well, if you turn that sideways, many companies experience that because they didn't understand their extended supply chain. And the manufacturing center of Wuhan separate the issues of the origin of the disease. Let's not even compete with or converse over that. Let's just talk about the manufacturing center it is today. So much dependency in that market was actually existing in supply chains globally in many different industries, but particularly the automotive sector. Well, you think about what companies are faced with today. Now we're in a different place of negotiation and supplier collaboration, and frankly, developing strategic relationships where trust can be garnered. Understanding more of the risk behind that. Many companies are trying to figure this out right now. third piece, I believe, is, certainly our construction, of new capacity, warehousing, the building of trucks, things that the mechanical aspect of the supply chain needs to continue to move forward with so that we can really absorb the additional capacity needs to move things around is definitely in play. But I think it's the actual talent piece. Right now, we have and are witnessing a surgence of talent shift in supply chain. People know that there are opportunities to help companies solve their problems. They've been, if you will, sequestered by COVID. There's a pent-up desire to reconnect human to human, and perhaps it's better in a different place to advance my career now. So as CSCMP, we're seeing a tremendous interest in companies trying to connect with us, or not trying, but actually connecting with us at either a corporate or individual membership level in order to help sharpen their saw and develop their people, because the competitive advantage that companies have will truly be their people. There's a piece I'll preserve for Stefan to talk about in the digitization, but digitalization is really key. And as a part of this, companies who didn't have visibility and insight into their supply chain constraints, or really to understand how to drive competitive advantage through all of this, are now racing to figure out, what do I need to digitize and what does my digitalization strategy need to be? So there is a lot going on, Dan, in terms of reevaluating and redistributing the impacts of supply chain from a cost to serve, building redundancy and resiliency where it needs to be, and well, with the eye on sustaining business and still trying to create competitive advantage.
Thank you. Well said. What about you, Stefan? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, in general, we are also, as a freight forwarder, of course, we are connected to many clients in many different verticals. And at the end, it really comes down to the problem that you want to stay in control of your logistics and of your supply chain. And that's really currently a huge problem, because a lot of times you rather react and repair and try to recover things, and you are not on top of it because you cannot prevent things from happening. And that's really what we see as well, because you have so many different players in the different segments and transport modes, and you need to bring them all together. And if you are not on top of it and you cannot stay in control of it, then it really impacts the business, because no matter if you're in automotive and your goods are not in time, so your production has a standstill, or you are in the fashion industry and your next, let's say, season doesn't come into the stores or into the e-commerce warehouse in time, you are in trouble. And I see that this is currently really very, very difficult to realize, to stay in control, because you have so many different things moving in the supply chain. And you really see that those companies that are on top of it, and that's also, of course, what we aim to do as a freight forwarder, to provide this visibility and to provide this control, to make sure that you stay in control. That's really, I think, a huge issue, because just imagine in the last 18 months what happened. Yeah, we had the huge pandemic crisis. All of a sudden, the demands are completely different. Every company then try to see, okay, what's in the network? What do I have? Those companies that were really in control of their supply chain inventory. What's coming towards me? What's still in production? What's already in the warehouse? They could shift really quick and see, okay, if I want to now adapt to these demands, I need these digital visibility in order to get there. Those companies that were a little bit in the dark and that didn't have good partners at hand to support with that information really needed months and months to really adapt to what happened. And the same now with the Suez Canal crisis. It's not just seeing which ships are right at the point where it happened, but it's also which ships are coming in, which ones are impacted, how big is the traffic jam, what can I prevent, and all of these things. Of course, that's where we try to bring the digitalization and the visibility together in order to stay in control, and then also provide our clients with more and more tools to make sure that they actually are in control, because that's really currently one of the main challenges. Of course, right next to things like resilience in the supply chain and other things like talent, capacities, but it's, I think, as everybody already said, those are the things that are currently really impacting.
Mm-hmm. Billy alluded to the warehouse situation, and I think that's a key statement right there, because a lot of freight coming inbound now, and a lot of customers are, in my opinion, are going for real-time inventory now. They don't want to get stuck again without their inventory, if God forbid something like this ever happened again. So they learn from that. So they're building their inventories so more closer to their customer base, et cetera, et cetera. But it's tying up the warehousing. Warehousing rates are going through the roof. You can't find space in some areas like California or the New York metro area or Chicago. Alluding to your point about the supply chain, how does that slow up? Or what do you do to incorporate more capacity in that field? What do you guys? What are your thoughts on that, guys? Anybody?
So capacity in warehousing is just like anything else. It's not just the physical building; it's the people to work there. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we had situations where we had loads of freight that people couldn't unload because they didn't have anybody working in their warehouse, right? So we had to bring it back, and that every time that happens, that's just an inefficiency in the supply chain that good chance to lose visibility if there's not the right reporting going on. It just, I think the people side of what's going on today is something that we still don't have a great solution for. That and demand's never been higher, right? The combination of the two. But anyway, we're not in the warehouse business. We have people working our docks. We call them warehouse men, but they're, that I just know from the customer side, they were really struggling keeping, getting enough people to work in their warehouse to keep the supplies moving once they get it to them, right? So
basically a people problem. Okay. Thank you, sir.
I would also add that, depending on how you want to solve it, but also if you want to then nearshore all of a sudden, then the implementation complexity also is there, right? So you cannot just move a warehouse from one point to the other. You need the people, which is of course currently very hard to get. But on top of it, if you have complex processes and pick and pack operations, is also nothing you can set up within a day. And then also the logistic changes that come with it in order to bring everything to the new warehouse, getting the providers adjusted and all of that. So you really need to have a clear strategy and a clear plan how to do that, because that's nothing you can just do overnight.
Great. Okay. Thank you, guys. Next question. Why real-time visibility and on-time support should be core to your supply chain strategy?
I'll jump in if I can.
Yeah, please.
On that, sure. I think the cross-section of not only historical clients that we've had through our firm, but also thinking about our members at CSCMP, the number one prioritization I think right now is I need visibility into the supply chain. And that is defined different ways, but if we just talk about logistics, it's an easy place to gain, the setup is predominantly there, and many software platforms are multi-tenant oriented. The hooks are already in place with many carriers. The idea behind having visibility as product lifts from the origin and heads towards the destination, measuring cycle time, inventory is working capital. How far do we go in terms of building to stock versus make to order in our strategy shift right now, right, to have the assurance of supply. As we talked about, many companies are making to stock. They do not want to run out. They do not want to face the challenges that they experienced the last year and a half, bar none. So they're building in resiliency in the supply chain through inventory. And much like that, there's a dependency because that expense is in place. Where can we offset that so that our total landed cost, total cost to operate doesn't go out the window? So I think transportation visibility and visibility into all of the events from origin to destination is a great way to understand customer delivery expectation assurances. I won't say guarantees. We don't want to be doing that right now. But the assurance of a reasonable time frame and understanding where the anomalies are and the constraints so that you can remove those over time through deeper study. These platforms enable that, just to mention a few. I think they're vitally important. Agreed.
What do you think, Billy?
So
Real-time
for
visibility.
us, the transparency there, we look at it two different ways. There's our internal transparency and visibility, where we want every team member to be making a plan for his work through things he sees coming to them for their workload, and for us to optimize our fleet, optimize our routes. That's critical for us to be able to do that efficiently and provide the type of service we need to provide. Then it matches up with the visibility to the customer, right? So there's two different paths for us: the visibility, internal and then external. They are certainly linked together because we want to see the same thing, but for different purposes, right? For the customers, more for their being able to plan their supply chain around the visibility of what's going on in our system, and for our people to internally make sure that their plans and their efforts are in line with what the freight opportunity is.
From a 3PL point of view, the on-time visibility, well, I could tell you the real-time visibility and on-time support at GLT, customer service is bar none. I have to say, staying in touch with the customers, keeping them informed every step of the way, letting them know when it's picked up, letting them know if there's a damage, letting them know if there's a delay, letting them know when it's delivered, keeping them in the loop. Some customers, or a lot of customers, don't have the time just to look on the website. They want to be told, they want to be nursed, and that's, from our point of view, that's what we do. We keep them in the loop, we keep them informed, and as quickly as possible. What about on your side, Stefan? What do you think?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same that, like you just said, because I think, especially great example is during the pandemic crisis. So for our clients, it was most important to know exactly from the earliest point when the PO was placed with their vendors until it hits their dock. How much inventory do I actually have? Can I simulate it to adapt to the demands, right? So really knowing that, oh, this is already in production, this is already on the water, this is in the air, and this is already in on my dock, to really have the full visibility in there, because then you can very flexibly adapt to whatever demands are coming in. Or if you say, look, the Suez Canal incident, you knew, okay, I know I cannot get anything on the ship anymore if my vendors are in southern China. Let me discuss right away with my with the freight forwarder, with us and the client together. Can we maybe move it now via rail and the Silk Road to Europe? Can we do it maybe with an air freight? Once you have that visibility, you are in control. You can really do something about it before things happen. If you don't, and you're left in the dark, and your partner doesn't inform you well, or the platform is not existing, there's actually no chance, because then you just have to wait until it hits your dock to really see what are you doing next. And I think that's why, if you really want to be flexible and on top of all the moving parts, then you have to have a platform that starts from the placing the PO until all the way until it hits your dock. And that's what the clients definitely, no matter if it's automotive, fashion, healthcare, what they really want to see nowadays, and get continuous updates about the updated forecasts whenever, the things will then arrive. So that's at least what we experience, and I guess also what Henning told earlier in his presentation.
Thank you. Any further comments on that, guys? Okay. Next one. Let's go with this one. Why reliable data is crucial for effective supply chain management? Well, that should be an easy one for you, Mark. I'm sorry, Stefan.
Yeah, I mean, I would always say if your data is inaccurate or not complete, there are two different things that can happen. Either nobody trusts it, and then it's even worse than having no data, because then everybody does manual work, and they go to the websites of the carriers and of the transportation companies and try to somehow get the information because they don't trust the system. Or even worse, they just trust it and they miserably fail in everything they are doing, because then it never fits to reality. And of course, everything that's attached to it, like your algorithms, they work on data. And if the data cannot be turned into information and ultimately into action, or into the wrong action even, then of course you are in trouble, because you're not meeting the reality's demands. So that the data is accurate is absolutely key. Of course, there are mechanisms to a certain degree nowadays with smart algorithms to augment the data and to see where you have the issues. Nevertheless, if there's no basic quality existing, you definitely have a huge issue. And that's also something a lot of people ask why these digital freight forwarders, why they don't scale like other startups scale, because they are in the middle of hundreds and hundreds of different providers and systems, and they are completely, like everyone, they have to rely on the data they get. And if that's not reliable or in time, no way that all your digital capabilities you can fully leverage and build on top of it, because you rely on this information. And that's certainly something that you see everywhere in the industry, because if, let's say, a normal transport from China to the US, you at least have 4 or 5, sometimes more than 10 parties involved. They all provide information and they all have to provide it in time. And if that's not there, then you are in trouble. That's definitely the case.
And digital information is quite different than real-time information, because, and you could look at, for instance, your TMS and see that your shipment is out for delivery, or it's still sitting on a dock, or is it in transit, could be another one. So, as a 3PL, you call the carrier to find out why it's still sitting on the dock and why it's not delivered, and you can get 4 different answers. But it doesn't give you the exact reason why, and the customer's always like, well, what is it? What's the real answer? So there's a difference between digital and live.
Well, we used to say time is money, right? We used to say time is money. Now we really clearly can say time certainly is money, but data is hard money. And the reason is we're making decisions off of this data. And if data is in error, it actually could create severe negative financial impacts, right, in a very short time. So data quality is very, very important. I mean, it's easy to say that, garbage in, garbage out, but the reality is you got to be careful, right? It's really about understanding data quality. I'll give you a point just real quick. So I had a major implementation that I did, in the recent history, and a peer of mine came to me and he said, okay, so you've got the budget, you got your mega millions to run this thing, and you're going to implement something great, but watch master data. And I just thought, well, you know what? We're courageous. We'll just push right through it. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. So the reality is that data quality matters, and we got to have smart people understand that when data is right versus when.
Billy, thoughts on that from the carrier side?
Yeah, sure. There's internal data, right? And then there's data that comes from the 3PLs and the people we're communicating with outside of ourselves, and both, trust of that data is critical. We're actually optimizing routes based on that data, right? And if something happens and that data came in wasn't real, or maybe that was intended for somebody else instead of your company, and here you are with, you've sent a guy to go pick up freight, and you get there, no, that's for somebody else. That went to the wrong, So we get a lot of data continuity issues, and so it affects the trust. But I've seen that's gotten a lot better in the last year. I think, if nothing else, COVID drove data to have to be better, right? And so we're starting to rely on it more and more externally, particularly with our customers, and we know how critical it is to their success and what they're trying to do. And but you're right. There was a time when we go, oh, we have this great data package. I go, yeah, but it's not going to be accurate. What difference does it make, right? But we've gotten a lot better there. So put a lot of resources to it too.
True, and that's a perfect segue into our next question. What technologies are shaping your company's digital future, Billy?
Well, just like what we're talking, doing business with our customers without paper, right? Doing it digitally, making sure, the less keystrokes we have going on in a day, the more accurate and the more efficient things are, right? So it starts with the customer, sending us their bill ladens by APIs that'll fit our system, whether they're working through another party or not. Anytime we can get that data and information perfectly accurate, it's one less chance for human error, and we can count on it better. So we're doing a lot of things internally to reduce paper on our docks and even with deliveries, right? Not necessarily being required to have paper delivery receipts with less and less people on the receiving end. And anyway, we're spending a lot of time and energy on not only that, but the redundancy. We're working on better ways to make sure our systems in the field never go down. I mean, we can't hardly move a piece of freight across the dock. Our forklifts have computers on them to allow us to know when a shipment's crossed the dock. And if we lose that connectivity, I mean, the old days of, well, just do it by paper. Well, that's hard to do. So we're, using a lot of generators, a lot of backup systems, a lot of multiple ways to, share information within our own company. So
yeah, I would say redundancy on your backup systems are certainly logical. I mean, when I was back in the day at NEMF, we were hit with a ransom attack, and we were trying to get away from the paper thing for a while there, and when we got hit with that ransom attack, it just disrupted the whole system. Our computers weren't working correctly. We had to go to paper. You're always going to have that fail-safe. That's my point. The data and technology is great, but what if somebody pulls the plug? What do you do?
Well, faulty technology will drive you to paper, right?
Right. Okay, great. Thank you, sir, on that one. You guys want to chime in on that at all, or should we move on to another one? Let's move on.
Well, yeah, no, I think just real quick, Dan.
Okay, so please.
There's so much happening in the supply chain that we have to give a shout out to. But from today's digital strategies, I think automation from machine learning certainly is very much in play right now. The question is when you get on the bus. That's a key component, right? And I think also the tactical execution becoming automated is very critical. Government systems, and we talked about visibility within our supply chain, the logistics visibility, but everything is operating on a digital landscape. But along with this comes protection, IT and intellectual property security risk from a cybersecurity perspective. So I think we need to look at this comprehensively, but for sure, the less paper we have, the less risk, the more automation, the more visibility, and the more intuitive we are in our supply chains.
Maybe one to add, I think the combination of IoT and artificial intelligence, like machine learning or other analytics algorithms, will drastically change the logistics industry. Why is that the case? Because right now, exactly what you just said, digital information is not real-time information. But these small little devices, they become cheaper and cheaper and reusable. And I guess within the next, let's say 3 to 5 years, pretty much any cargo will have a device that is that you can track. And having that, you collect all the information real time about all the different transportation streams, how long it takes, for example, to process through customs, to do different things, and building with good forecasting algorithms on top of it that will massively change the predictability and the capability of optimizing the supply chain. And I think this is something that will heavily hit in the next years, maybe still not as present as it could be. But this is really something I see, because there's absolutely no reason why that shouldn't happen, and why there won't be digital ecosystems that are able to give you that predictability. And that's at the end what you need in order to optimize your supply chain sufficiently. Of course, all of that has limits. I remember like 2 or 3 years ago, there was a huge port congestion in Mexico. And it was really the first time that happened, due to the reason that actually 2 car manufacturers really ramped up their production. Of course, if there's no historic data, then it's tough to predict what's going to happen. So then it has limitations. But nevertheless, I think IoT in combination with artificial intelligence is really massively shaping supply chain management in the future.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, guys, what strategies are you implementing to keep the costs down without sacrificing service and keeping your competitiveness in the market? I'm going to take that one first. From a 3PL point of view, technology, bottom line, that's what it comes down to. artificial intelligence. Customer sends an email with what he's looking for. He's answered in less than 5 minutes with a rate. I mean, that's where GLT is. That's where a lot of 3PLs are going right now, providing a cost-efficient method. You know, we would have 25 pricing specialists sitting on a daily basis answering emails. Now we have 6, and we're using those other 19 people in other departments in our company. So there's a cost savings right there. What are you guys doing in your respective fields to keep the cost down, stay competitive? Technology?
Yeah, so, you know, obviously being a labor-intensive business, cost savings come in big chunks where we can find ways for technology to assist us in really what we call staying in cycle, right? Where we're planning our workforce around our workload, and we've just seen huge progress in that arena, not just from a automation point of view, but just like, again, just managing the data and planning around that data for making sure the right workload, the right runs are set up with maximum amounts of types of business on that truck to make sure every unit pays its way. Right? So it's ours is a business of managing your misses, kind of like golf, right? But and anything you can do to find a loophole and fix that loophole with technology, those are big dollar savings.
Yeah, I think for sure, Billy, spot on. You know, but you know, when it comes to a cost competitive position, I think we're at the influx, or perhaps you might agree or maybe disagree with this, but you know, companies that have optimized their supply chain historically pre-COVID and perhaps even pre-2018, where they looked at on balance just-in-time inventory because everything else in the supply chain was well harmonized and we had few, you know, if you will, natural disasters. We had some, but you know, the tsunami and you know, in Asia, plus the volcano in Iceland, other things cause short-term disruptions, but we worked through those. The reality, I think, today is that, you know, it's cost offset. So what are we doing to take cost out may not be the mantra of the day. What we are doing is to, in fact, prevent lost sales and lost ROI on our investment. So redundancy and resiliency builds cost into a supply chain. If it's not done, you know, in a more strategic way, it can be pretty expensive. At the same time, it's building rewards for some companies at the present time, because that redundancy must be in place to satisfy demand without missing sales. Here's an example. Many out of Asia right now are looking for warehousing in Asia, who are trying to export their goods to the US. And why are they doing that? It's the reliability of the global transportation designed today to be able to meet the needs over demand, you know, higher demand under capacity, if you will. So we're waiting. Our lead times out of Asia are going from 35 to 40 days from dock to dock. So dock from manufacturer to dock in the US. Now we're at 80 days. Maybe for some, it's 120 days. So we're still building inventory, but where are we going to put the stuff? So we're creating redundancy in warehousing, not only here in the US, but also in China as an example, to ensure that capacity from an inventory perspective is in play. So I think optimization looks a little bit different, and I don't even know that we can call it optimization. I think we can just call it on the basis of supply chain elasticity, delivering reliability of delivery. It's really not even a cost play. So it's difficult to say that we're focused strictly on cost optimization. I think it's more cost mitigation today from the view that we have across industries and across verticals.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Well said.
I agree. Okay. Next question. How the ability to integrate technology and information across all partners is a game changer, and what are the benefits and value to that, integrating technology and information? Well, I think we just discussed that for the last 20 minutes. Any other further comments on that?
Certainly companies that were already well integrated up and down and across their supply chain from an IT perspective, or digitization where demand sensing occurs at the point of sale all the way through to building of the next order, right, to deliver and replenish. Those are the ones that probably had the greatest opportunity, although success might look differently, but certainly the greatest opportunity to continue to succeed in their goals throughout the challenges of COVID. And again, it probably wasn't a perfect scenario because we all know some of the greatest supply chains and retail big box stores, unnamed at this point, you know who they are, were really prideful in the way that they always had stock for customers to buy. And we saw them having their challenges. Although they weren't as great, perhaps, as others that didn't have end-to-end connectivity throughout the supply chain. So I think that really matters. Sophistication in digital connectivity, demand sensing, as well as demand fulfillment is something that many companies now are, and according to a recent survey that we just did at CSCMP, are pointing to, among others, but certainly that one is a high priority.
Okay, Stefan?
Yeah, I also think that, as we discussed before already, you need end-to-end visibility and you need to integrate all parties. So even if, let's say for us, if we integrate all transport modes, let's see the origin leg, the main leg, and the destination leg, if we don't know how long it takes to process through customs or certain other procedures at any inland ports or whatever it is, we don't have end-to-end visibility and we cannot give a good forecast by when actually the goods will hit the dock. So I really believe that in these new ecosystems where everybody feeds their information and then you get the information from the others back, because I think the days are a little bit over where all the companies create their own little thing, you know, they have their trucker app and they have their own little ecosystem and they hope that that's going to be the best ecosystem in the market. I rather believe in ecosystems where everybody feeds in and then you get the information back. And I think that's also the future. And you see that more and more, that you have the first platforms that are actually successful. And I think it's great because it benefits us as a freight forwarder. We get the information from a single source of truth, so to speak. And that will be more and more a game changer for everyone. And then really comes down to your service as a company. What do you provide your clients? And not so much on collecting information. That should be like Google. It should be there and you do something with it. So I highly believe that we need to think in these platforms and share this information, of course, with all the security behind it. But I believe in these models going forward.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good segue into this next question, actually. Do you think it's best to invest in technology or develop strategic partnerships that have technology within the supply chain? And what are the benefits of both options? So do you invest in it yourself and develop your own technology in-house, or do you go with strategic partnerships and bring them in to do all the work for you? What do you think?
So in our world, we do both, right? we kind of draw the line is if we can have a partnership and somebody's already kind of figured something out that we haven't quite conquered yet, we'll utilize that. The things that we develop ourselves, we consider our competitive advantages, things that maybe we do uniquely, and we want to develop the technology that supports that, promotes that, and allows us to do it better, right? So those are the type of things we're trying to focus internally on and utilize the technology partners on the more generic type things. But we have a 150-person staff, IT staff, that's looking for better ways internally for us to do things that are better to our core competency to make us a better company.
We all also are in the same boat with both positions, in-house technology development and implementation, as well as outside resourcing. And combined, it adds to a very successful technology platform for GLT. What about you, Mark?
So I've seen both and I support both models, and here's why. So for the small, medium business enterprise, and really for the Fortune 100, where you need fast uptime, skilled expertise, and a known platform that's tried and true. In many cases, obviously, as 3PLs, you guys could be also onboarding new technology, but it's not likely to occur in the dark of the night, right? So generally, these things are more gradual. So you're working off of reliable systems that can deliver pretty fast results. Say, for example, logistics event management, right? Or purchase order management and document pass-through. You're set up to do that. And if you're the sole provider of a company or one of few providers, they can afford to have their data in your system as long as the protection's there, probably at a lower cost, faster uptime, and they can get the results and benefits they're looking for. The other model would be, internal sourcing of a broader platform that can be used globally. You own the data. The uptime is going to be slower. You're going to have dependency on your own staff to collect the data for the user acceptance testing and system build out phase, right? Even though these may be in the cloud solutions with faster uptime than the historical behind the firewall type IT platforms, you still own a lot more and will have to have much more upfront investment of people and resources to get those systems stood up and then validate, like we talked earlier, that the data is correct. So it depends, but both have benefits and both have rewards back to the user.
Agreed. Stefan?
Yeah, I also think there's no either or, that there's a combination. I mean, the beauty of in today's digital world and the cloud is that for almost everything you find like a very passionate startup or company that already did it, and they provide an API, for example, for it. So for example, back in the days, maybe you would have 4 or 5 people talking about carbon footprint and trying to calculate and write that on their own. Nowadays, you can be rest assured, if you scan the market, you will find 4 or 5 companies that already able to provide you a carbon footprint within a second, and you can easily adapt that. You also don't want to write your own rate management or TMS necessarily, but putting all of that together into a unique customer experience, that's maybe what you want to do on your own, where you just say, okay, now I configure these systems and I plug them together, and I have a unique platform on top of it to provide services to our clients or to do optimizations. So I think you always, and the more in the future, you will see that more and more that you integrate cloud API systems, but then it's really the sciences to connect them and integrate them in a way that you provide a good customer experience to your clients. And that's something we focus on. So we do both. We scan the markets, we look at what kind of solutions are out there that can improve our overall service. And then we normally integrate it into our platform to augment our existing services with that.
Okay, this is a good question. This comes from Camilo out in the field here in the audience. Do you consider data science a must nowadays in logistics? If so, are you assigning new resources to get better, reliable data? What do you think, Stefan? Do you
Data science is a little bit, I mean, it depends a little bit on the angle. I think most important for a company when it comes to data science is to know which use cases really make a business case in your industry, and then really scan if there are already maybe solutions out there, and which use cases you really have to develop on your own. So for most of the things, let's say if we talk in warehousing and we talk about inventory optimizations and others, normally there's solutions out there, and you just need good people that understand data science and can evaluate these solutions. Of course, sometimes there are other things where you say, look, now I really need some people that know machine learning that can train data and find the right model in order to predict certain things or to find patterns or whatever, or what have you. But most of the solutions nowadays out there already have a part of it in it, and you definitely need people that understand it and can evaluate it. And then on top of it, you have to see whether it really makes sense to build up also data science capabilities in terms of real programming on your own. For us, we did it. So we have built up a data lab or a data science lab, because there are certain things where we think that you cannot get it from the market, and it makes absolute sense to combine our information and do predictions with it. But we also use a lot of solutions where the actual data science algorithm programming comes from outside, and we just know how to apply it.
Yeah, I fully agree, Stefan. I really do. I'm sorry, Dan, didn't mean to cut you.
No, I knew you were going to have a comment. I was just going to go right to you on that one.
Yeah, another talking head, right? So no, I would be remiss if I didn't really talk about the value of a collaborative partnership between industry and academia. There are fantastic institutions in the US and around the world that are actually creating the next generation of, if you will, automation, things we've never heard of. They're also testing and doing scientific studies on the reliability, the throughput, and the design of hardware systems that actually create the very data and the analytics, the algorithms, if you will, and the unique designs, the repeatability of this. So decision science and science behind today's digital world is without mention, of course, reliable heavily on the scientific aspect of this and the decisions that go into that. So I think this is vital. Not that this isn't occurring in the private sector, it certainly is, but I believe is a highly valuable and must need collaboration between academia and the practitioner world, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from your point of view, Bill, how does that work with Estes freight lines? I mean, you have your 150 IT specialists in the back. Are they collaborating? Are they collaborating with the scientific world?
So when you mean the scientific world, you mean outside of
academia? Yeah, like as Mark just mentioned.
So yes, they are. We have some connections with Virginia Commonwealth University. They're in Richmond, and then William and Mary. They bring in their teams. We collaborate with them. So for me, it's all about having data that actually moves the needle, right? I mean, we have more data than you can shake a stick at, and we have really smart people that can turn that into information. But unless that really moves the needle, so the gap between great information and actually applying it to make an improvement. I mean, I think that's where we can have a lot more collaboration and become better at knowing how to do that.
Agreed. Okay. Thank you, guys. Next question there. What is your perspective about the future of our industry and what technologies will drive change in the supply chain? Yeah, now here we are. We're going to have to take a guess here. But what do you think?
So Dan, look, there is no question that first and foremost, the last year and a half, fortunately or unfortunately, has taught consumers around the world how to put two words together: supply and chain, right? So they understand now more about how things get to market than perhaps they ever did. And that's a general statement I think is truthful.
Agreed.
Right? So case in point is, what happened when I went to the store and I couldn't buy toilet paper? What's going on? Is it because the guy in front of me has 3 packages in his cart? Probably not. Not really. Because if we had all this great demand sensing technology in place, the predictability and the resupply network would have fixed itself. But there was no snap of the finger. There was a tremendous shift in the pipelines that created the industrial make of that product, the institutional make of that product versus the consumer make. And those supply lines are uniquely different. Close, but uniquely different. So I think today, as we think about supply chain, we hopefully have motivated more of today's youth to think about careers in supply chain because they themselves want to be a part, especially today's, and I'm predicting future generations, want to be part of solving big problems, not just for the business they work in, but for humankind and society. So where can they best contribute? The second thing is, if we boil down the supply chain into the plan, source, make functions and deliver functions, plus you add customer service and you add all the supporting functions, I'm right back what Michael Dell said many years ago. Everybody that works for me is involved in supply chain. It's not just the people making the laptops, and the computers. It's everybody from the janitor all the way across to me. And notice I said across, not up. Mm-hmm. We're all participants in this, and the future state of supply chain is here to stay. This is the decade of supply chain. There's been a tremendous awakening because this is the function in aggregate that addresses today's problems, but solves the problems for the future when it comes to fulfilling demand and meeting consumer and human needs.
Like getting toilet paper to the store on time.
So Dan, yeah, those are definitely. So I think e-commerce has changed the supply chain in a
Oh.
large way. And certainly COVID drove that, but it was leaning that way anyway. And the interesting thing is we're talking about 10 years ago, the word supply chain hardly ever came up. There's not a person in this country today that doesn't know the supply chain is a bit stressed because they can't get things delivered to their home the way they could before COVID, or even with before the big demand, right? So in our world, e-commerce has really just boomed, and we've had to adjust our strategy around that. And but to your point about supply chain, it's a well-used term now. And there was a time, if you asked my wife what supply chain was, that was the chain she pulled to make me go to work, right? So that was
That's good.
So she could create more demand, right? By buying stuff.
exactly.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Personally, I'm still waiting for a couch for 6 months to be delivered to my home. 6
Oh.
months. 6 months for a couch.
You may be ahead of the curve,
That's
Dan.
pretty typical. Yeah.
It's crazy. But then again, Amazon can give me something overnight if it's not a couch. So it worked for some parts of the supply chain and not all of them, I would assume.
They're built. They're just in a warehouse in Shanghai waiting for a container.
Wow. Incredible. What are your thoughts, Stefan, on the future of
Well,
our industry?
I can make at least towards digitalization. I can make some predictions. I think, as I said before, in the next 3 to 5 years, and every piece of cargo, if it goes to compliance and legal validation, will have some sort of device that you can track. I think that will drastically change the supply chain visibility and the predictions, because now you really have the real truth of information and not something that 3 days later anyone tells you. I think that's happening. I also think that ecological optimization will be one of the points that you will see in more and more, not just carbon footprint, but the overall footprint that you have, and also within your whole planning that you also optimize towards ecological terms and not just financial terms. I think that's also something that's going to happen. And I also highly expect that more and more platforms will arise that will, either in local markets or in trade lanes or maybe in certain niches will take effect and take over, and we will more and more see these ecosystem and less company ecosystems. So you rather have network ecosystems across companies, but not just having like a DB Schenker or a Kühne Nagel and a Hellmann all their own digital ecosystem, but that will more and more go towards platforms. And all of that is, I think, going to happen. And the fourth thing I also foresee for the industry is hopefully that more and more, and you see first tests of that already in big metropolitan areas, that you don't, everyone moves with their trucks into the area, but you rather optimize also towards ecological footprints. And you really see that the overall goods are optimized, the last mile is optimized, and not like today that, three drivers from Amazon, DHL, and maybe another company are in your street at the same time. So I highly expect all of these things to happen if I just envision the future of the industry. But it's very, I'm absolutely always amazed by the developments that are out there and the opportunities. And I think it's the greatest time ever to be in the industry, because so many things are happening right now and you can always create. And the last part, I think, is you more and more, again, in companies have to go towards the human side of your employees, because in the past, you were very transactional from department to department to department. But when it comes to digitalization, you have to think cross-department, cross-functional, and you also need to have the creativity back of the people to really make an impact. So bringing agility into an enterprise also will be shaping the future of the industry, because I think in the future world, you have to be agile in order to stay relevant in the market.
Well said. Thank you. From my perspective, it's going to be all about visibility. It's going to be about technology, growth in technology, and more one-stop shopping for customers. Customers are trending more towards going to a 3PL that's going to provide the over-length haul as well as the one pallet shipment, or the full truckload move, where they can be assisting customers more fully for a well-rounded experience in the logistics world. So that's my prediction, that the more visibility, more one-stop shopping, and much more technology to help with that visibility. So,
Spoken
all right,
as
guys.
a true ex-carrier, now 3PL.
Wow, you certainly said it, Billy. I was with asset-based carriers for 36 years. So, yep, it's true though. I've seen that trending for a while there, even though when I was on the other side of the fence. And there's a reason why a large percentage of the country is trending towards the 3PLs. But the carriers, without them, America doesn't move. So
That's
we
right.
certainly need you guys. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Very insightful. Any last comments?
Well, Dan, I just wanted to mention that I think would help every one of your listeners and all of us together, and that is CSCMP's Edge Global Conference will be live in Atlanta the end of September. There are many, many companies already registered. We have a lot of attendees heading that way, and I want to invite all of you to attend this 3.5-day conference, because these questions and many others can be addressed live in person through our tracks, over 100 educational tracks, but also the exhibition hall and the supply chain exchange. So we welcome you back, and we're glad to be live again in Atlanta.
Excellent. Looking forward to it. Thank you, gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your day. And once again, on behalf of GLT Logistics, we really appreciate your time.
No, thank
Thanks,
you.
Dan.
Thanks. Enjoy it, guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, just want to remind you to please make sure that you visit our sponsor booths, located at the tab at the top of your screen. Also, don't forget, we have our Hupp Tech True or False Myths about automation coming up right after these commercials.